You've probably noticed how easy it is during meditation for attention to wander off and for you to forget about the meditation object, the breath, right? Especially at the start of your meditation session when you're just getting settled. So I want to share a strategy that you can use at the beginning of your session that helps you stay engaged with the breath a little bit more easily. And I want to be clear about something though. When your attention wanders, and we've talked about this, when your attention wanders, nothing's gone wrong, right? You haven't made a mistake. It's not a problem. And that wandering is a natural part of this meditation process, right? And what really matters is the noticing and coming back. So it's okay. Nothing's gone wrong. But that being said, it's still useful, especially when you're starting out as a meditator, to have some aids and strategies that you can use to just help your mind become more accustomed to stabilizing on an object like this. So that's what this strategy is, and it's very simple. It's just counting the breaths. So it's like this. When you breathe in, you count 1. In your head, of course, not out loud. When you breathe in, you count 1. When you breathe out, you count 1. When you breathe in, you count 2. When you breathe out, you count 2. And so on, right? So it's just a simple counting technique where each full breath cycle gets 1 number. And the reason this is helpful is because if your mind wanders off and you start thinking about something you have to do later, or you start thinking about a conversation that you had earlier, you tend to lose count, right? So losing count becomes a signal that your attention has wandered, and it sort of snaps you out of it so that you can come back to the present moment, come back to the breath. And then when you do come back, you just start back over at 1 and continue counting the breaths. And another thing about this technique that's helpful to understand is that you don't want to make the counting sort of too loud or too predominant in your mind. Because there are 2 things happening, right? There's the paying attention to the tactile sensation of the breath at the nose, which is really still your anchor, still your primary meditation object. And then on top of that, you've sort of layered this inner voice counting. So the thing to understand is just not to make that inner voice too loud. You don't want that to become central in your mind so that the breath, the actual sensation of the breath gets sort of pushed to the side, right? Don't let that usurp center stage. Keep the breath front and center, and the inner voice counting can be almost like a whisper, okay? And another thing about this practice is that it's generally useful to do this up to a 10 count. Beyond 10, it becomes less useful. And the reason is that it starts to become automatic at that point. The counting just happens on its own. And if it's happening on its own, it's no longer going to work as sort of a signal, right? Because you're not going to lose count, and it's not going to trigger the recognition that your attention has wandered. So at the start of my sit, I like to sit down, take my posture, bring my attention to my breath, and then do a 10 count. And then I just drop the counting, okay? Last thing about this practice, and this comes from my teacher Culadasa. It's actually pretty clever. This, again, is about avoiding things becoming automatic, right? Because once things are automatic, they stop holding your attention in the same way, right? So how do we normally think of our breath or our breath cycles? If I were to say, take 1 breath, what would you do? You'd probably breathe in and then breathe out, right? That's how we think of a breath. 1 breath in, 1 breath out. And that sort of becomes automatic. So what my teacher suggests as a way to sort of stay more engaged, to keep it from becoming automatic, start thinking of a breath cycle as starting with the out breath. So out breath, then in breath. And so when you're doing the counting, instead of counting, I know I said before, breathe in, count 1, breathe out, count 1. This is what I do. This is what my teacher taught me, and I found it to be really helpful. Instead, start your count on the out breath. Breathe out 1, breathe in 1. Breathe out 2, breathe in 2. It just keeps things from becoming automatic. It keeps you engaged. So that's the counting technique. Very simple and very helpful. Look, I've been meditating for many, many years, and I still start almost every meditation session with a 10 count. It just helps me settle in, sort of become familiar with the meditation object, and engage my attention. So give it a try.